Alright. Now since you know about the velocity and the speed, now you know what is velocity, now you know what is speed. Now we are moving on to the speed. In this speed, right, the first thing that we have to learn about is the average speed, right. What is this average speed? That is what we have to learn now. So when it comes to average speed, the average speed means as an example, in new vehicle, the latest vehicles, you may have seen in the dashboard, you have average speed, right. So the average speed means, as an example, if you are going in the road, right, when you are going in the road in the vehicle, you are not going from the same speed everywhere in the road. Your speed is different because you have traffic, you have to stop at some color lights, right. So your speed is not constant, right. So the average speed means the total distance, right. Average speed equals the total distance divided by total time taken, right. That's it. Average speed means the total distance divided by total time, right. As an example, let's assume you are traveling 200 kilometers, 200 kilometers, and you take 5 hours, 5 hours. So the average speed is going to be 200 kilometers divided by 5 hours, which is going to be 40 kilometers per hour. This means we have traveled 40 kilometers per 1 hour, right. So it's depending, it doesn't mean that in every 1 hour we are traveling 40 kilometers, right, but this is averagely, as an average, how much we got. Understood? Even in the school, when you write your exams, you get your average, class average, right. That means how much of marks that you got for the every subject divided by the subjects that you have. If it is 9, divided by 9, right. So this is the average speed. Average speed means total distance divided by total time taken. Alright, so this is about the speed, average speed. Next we are going to talk about the velocity, right. Next we are going to talk about the velocity. So when it comes to the velocity, right, when it comes to the velocity, what you should know, same like the average speed, in the velocity you also have average velocity, right, average velocity. So what is average velocity? In the previous one, the average speed was total distance traveled divided by total time. That was the equation. In this velocity, the average velocity is going to be total displacement divided by total time. Total displacement. The only difference in every equation, keep it in mind that if it is speed, it is the distance. With the velocity, it's displacement. With the speed, it's distance. Because the speed and distance both are non-vector. Speed and distance both are non-vectors. But velocity and displacement both are vectors. Let's think, a vehicle is moving from A to B city, right. A vehicle is moving from A to B city, right. And if you talk about the displacement, the shortest distance between A and B cities, it is 100 kilometers. But let's assume there is only one road that you can reach from A to B, and that the distance of that road is 500 kilometers. So we have 500 kilometers road. So now you have to travel from A to B from a vehicle. So you have to travel from this 500 kilometers road, right? You have to travel from the road. So when you are traveling from the road, this is the distance that you travel. This is the distance, but this is the displacement. This is the distance and this is the displacement. So when you consider about the distance and the displacement, right, you can also talk about the velocity, average velocity and the average speed. Let's assume you have to travel to go this 500 kilometers, you have to travel 5 hours. You are traveling 5 hours. Average speed. The average speed, the equation was the distance divided by time, the total distance divided by time. So the total distance is 500 kilometers. Total distance is 500 kilometers divided by the time. The total time taken was 5 hours. The total time was 5 hours. So the average speed equals, how much is it? 100 kilometers per hour. Every 1 hour the person has traveled 100 kilometers, right? But if you consider about the average velocity, the average velocity is total displacement divided by the total time. So the total displacement, I'm going to get this one now. The total displacement is 100 kilometers, right? 100 kilometers. So the total time taken still 5 hours. That means this is the displacement. Started from here, finished from here. This is the displacement, right? But he or she has had to go from this road, right? Which means it takes 5 hours, right? It takes 5 hours. So this should divide by 5 hours, right? This should divide by 5 hours. So when you divide this one by 5 hours, this is going to be equals to 20 kilometers per hour. So average velocity is 20 kilometers per hour, but average speed is 100 kilometers per hour. That's the difference between the average velocity and the average speed. So this is velocity and this is average velocity, right? So average speed is this one. I hope you all are clear with that. We discussed about the displacement, we discussed about the distance, we discussed about the average velocity, and we discussed about the average speed. And we discussed about vectors and we discussed about scalar quantities, right? We discussed them all.